library was built around 1926 by Bertram Goodyear. And he's a very famous architect from the East Coast. He's famous for designing the Balboa Park, exposition building for the World's Fair. And this pyramid was originally a cupola, but he changed it to a pyramid because not long before this work was started on the building, they had discovered King Tut's tomb, and everybody was interested in Egyptian history, so this is much more Egyptian. But you'll notice there's a torch and it's being held by a hand, so that is symbolic of everything the library stands for. And you'll see other torches inside and other suns. You see the sun inside the circle, inside the pyramid. So the theme of the library is the light of learning. So sharing knowledge and passing on the torch from one person to the next. So if you look above the door opening up to those two men on horseback, you can see one man passing the torch to the other. All of the sculpture inside the house was done by one sculptor, and his name was Lee Lowry. If you've been to New York City and you've seen Atlas at the Rockefeller Center, he's the one that also carved that one. So if you have questions as we're going, please feel free to ask me. Maybe I can answer them.
National Bank, Citibank, Union Bank, U.S. Bank, Deloitte Bank.
The right and the left.
Okay, this is phosphorus and Hesper, sunrise and sunset in mythology. And these are just lists of great philosophers and religious people. You can see Moses, Buddha, Confucius, and on this side, Augustine, Kant, Descartes. So just has to do with daylight and night, basically.
It is because I couldn't read what it was holding. It's
wisdom of the east, wisdom of the west, sunrise, sunset. I can't answer any questions about the garden because there's a garden tour on Saturday. And I can't, that's a particular artist that I don't know which one it is.
I saw there is a symbol of eagle in the United States.
In the United States, and that's a different eagle, but it may be something very similar.
So what's the meaning of the symbol?
The symbol of the eagle for the United States is symbolic of our country.
And the bald eagle.
The bald eagle, right.
Bald eagle means courage?
Perhaps, and
I think strongest.
Strength. Yes, I would say more strength.
Maybe elephant has no strength, right?
Yeah.
But the eagle eats meat. The elephant doesn't eat meat. It's vegetarian.
Yes, and I can't even answer that. I'm sorry, but I'm not an eagle expert.
The eagle reminds me of the symbol.
Yes, of the United States. No, you're right.
Marbles and tiles. This was already like this before the
Okay, well I'm going to explain that now because that's a good question.
Well, there's a new building next to the place that
Yes.
so all the
Buildings had to. No. And remember, this was built in 1926. So at the time that it was built, reinforced concrete was strong, it was cheap, and the library, you know, being it's a public building, they didn't want to spend too much money. It was also thought to be fireproof, but as it turns out, it wasn't fireproof because there was a fire in the library. So as I told you, the library was built in 1926, and we're standing in what is repainted, but it was part of the original library from way back then. What you're going to see today is a combination of old and new, because as the library grew and grew and grew, and it was one of 73 branches. So we have other city libraries all over LA County. But as this particular one in downtown grew larger and had more books, and then cassettes and newspapers and magazines, there wasn't enough room. So when there wasn't enough room, things got stacked together, and there was a man who set the library on fire in 1986, and he was never convicted. In fact, he set 2 different fires, and they put him in jail, but they did not have enough evidence. So it makes a great movie, you know. They tried to convict him, but they didn't have the proof. So after the fire, a lot of volunteers and librarians worked very hard to protect the library, and they took out a lot of books. They put them in these big white trucks that look like the trucks that come and take money away. So they took the books and magazines to Texas for several months, maybe even a couple of years, until they fixed the library and added the new part. They put them into freeze lockers, where basically huge rooms that are freezing to keep the fire from continuing, smoldering inside the books. So it's a really interesting story. Then eventually they brought them back. But because of the fire, the library lost the entire patents collection. You know, when you invent something, then you get a patent. They lost the entire music collection, and those had to be rebuilt. So what we're looking at now is the old part of the library, but this is a new painting. So this painting was commissioned after the library reopened in 1993. So there was a fire in 1986, and the library was not expanded until 1993. This painting is called Seven Centers. And there are 7 circles or centers, and it was painted by an artist named Rene Petropoulos. And the one that's most important is this sun right there. You see the sun with the white circle? And then there's also a black circle, and there are orange and yellow circles inside that. So we'll be seeing something that looks like that when we go upstairs. These lights are new, but they were made to look like the old ones. The old ones kind of disappear, but we have pictures, so we made the new ones to look like the old ones. So now we're going to go up to the most famous room in the original part of the library. You see this arch right here. The architect of this library had a really good idea. He wanted people to be able to cross the street, in the middle of the street, and go into the library through a pedestrian bridge without having to wait for cars to stop at the corner. So that was his idea. But the city said, too expensive, and we can't do it. But he didn't want to give up. So he needed something to go in there. So he created this lady, and he called her Civilization. So she's made out of Belgian marble and bronze. And if you look down the bronze panel that goes down the middle of her, you can see that at the very bottom, there's nothing. So that remembers a time there was no writing. We didn't have any history that we could remember. And then you see the pyramids, and then you see a ship above the pyramids representing the Phoenicians. And there's kind of a bird lion figure that's two mythical creatures that represented the Babylonians. And then above that is Greece and the Acropolis. And above that is a wolf with 2 wolves sucking on the mother. And that represents Romulus and Remus and Rome. And above that is Shiva, the Indian god of the east. Above that is a tall building, Notre Dame. Above that is a California buffalo. And the very last thing, right before the dark part of her dress, is the Liberty Bell, standing for the United States. If you look at her hat or her crown, you can see an angel leaning out both sides, like this, right? That stands for Los Angeles. And if you're familiar with the California flag, you look up at the top, you see the bear and the star. And those two things were on the California flag. Her staff is resting on a turtle, and supposedly the sculptor chose the turtle, not because it's an animal that we're afraid of, but because it's an animal that can live on land and in water. So it's powerful animal. The book is written in Greek and other languages, and these two sphinxes on either side, there's no real reason that they're here except to protect her. And a student asked me if there are ever flowers in there, and I've never seen flowers inside, so I think it's just a decoration. And these books have quotations from Greek. And they both have to do with knowledge and the importance of knowledge in the lives of people.
This looks like from Egypt.
Yes, don't they look Egyptian? Yeah. Very, very Egyptian, yeah. And I think at the time people were really into sphinxes. All of the library's ceilings are painted on concrete. Sometimes they look like they're painted on wood, but it's all concrete. And the same man painted all the ceilings in the library, and they all look very different. His name is Julian Guernsey, and he was a very famous painter. The library has two galleries. So this gallery, both galleries are free, and this gallery has shorter exhibits. This one just opened about a month ago, and as you can see, it's called State of Deception, the Power of Nazi Propaganda. And it's a part of the Holocaust Museum, but it's come to this library for a while. And it's a fascinating tour. And if you have time after our tour is over, it's really interesting. You can just do a self-guided tour. This gallery, so I forgot to tell you that this gallery, everything that gets exhibited here is because of the generosity of the Getty Museum. So things come from the Getty Museum free to this library. In contrast, this gallery, everything here is a representation of things that this library downtown has in its holdings. So these are all things basically owned by the people of Los Angeles. So right now we have posters from old movies. We have some famous artwork, a letter from Theodore Roosevelt, the former president of the United States, signed by him. And this gallery doesn't change very much. It's been the same pieces of art since I started doing the docing about 4 years ago, so it's always the same. The other one's different.